Are you a pervert or something? Okay. The whales have a 15-foot penis.
Hold on a sec. I just
National
want
Pornographic says it.
I'm sorry, Ken. You cut out there. They have a 15 what?
The whales have a 15-foot penis. I didn't cut out. You heard me. Google it yourself. The whales have a 15-foot penis.
I'm sorry, Ken. You cut out there. They have a 15
Are
what?
you a pervert or something? Okay. The whales have a 15-foot penis.
Hold on a sec. I just
National Pornographic says it.
I'm sorry, Ken. You cut out there. They have a 15 what?
The whales have a 15-foot penis. I didn't cut out. You heard me. Google it yourself. The whales have a 15-foot penis.
I'm sorry, Ken. You cut out there. They have a 15 what?
Are you a pervert or something? Okay. The whales have a 15-foot penis.
Hold on a sec. I just
National Pornographic says it.
I'm sorry, Ken. You cut out there. They have a 15 what?
The whales have a 15-foot penis. I didn't cut out. You heard me. Google it yourself. The whales have a 15-foot penis.
I'm sorry, Ken. You cut out there. They have a 15
Are
what?
you a pervert or something? Okay. The whales have a 15-foot penis.
What is up, heathens? How y'all doing? So, I'm still waiting on Kwaku to join. I believe that's how you pronounce his name. Still waiting on Kwaku to join. So, I figured we'd go ahead and go live, and he'll join. If he joins, he joins. If he doesn't, he doesn't, I guess. Really sorry for the immediate letdown in the stream here. So, depending on how this goes today, we may still have a live stream later on tonight. I have a backup plan for that, and or maybe we'll just review Kwaku's video right now. Maybe, I don't know. It depends on if Kwaku shows up, which he hasn't yet, and he's had the link since 3:53 my time. So, and we agreed, let me go back and make sure, 3 p.m. MST, that would be right now. That's an hour behind us, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. What's up there, Shannon? Shannon's in the comments. We've also got Jane and Cadence and KC, who's also in the room with me. And then we got Drew's book reviews. Jucane. We got Daniel Peterson. Lisa for Truth. Cadence Chrismer. Donnie C, who just said, what?
We also have our friend Roman Catholic Truth.
Roman Catholic Truth. There is no salvation outside the Catholic Church. Wow, maybe we should get that guy in here if Kwaku's not going to show up. Hang in there, Roman Catholic Truth, because that might be an interesting conversation, considering I'm an ex-Catholic. So just to go over, Monday we are going to be having a Mike Winger video where he gives his advice to his fellow Christians about what to do with unbelievers, or when non-believers ask for evidence and all this other kind of stuff. We're going to be going over that on Monday. Wednesday, I haven't decided what I'm going to do yet, but I do have a couple of videos in the pipeline. It all kind of depends on what happens here today. Yeah, I know, Russell Kafal, I really wish that I could go ahead and go, but Kwaku is not here yet. Oh, wait, hold on. Typing. He's typing. The link won't work. Let's see. Hold on. Not change layout. Settings. Oh, wait, meeting details. Copy joining info. see. Are you joining from your phone? I might need to. He's trying. Apparently, he's trying to get in. I've never had anybody have a problem with getting into a Google Meet. I mean, you literally just have to click the link and it'll pop up. So, like I said, next week's gonna kind of depend on how it goes, which it seems like Kwaku's trying to get into this. Today, while I was at work, I listened to a lot of David Fitzgerald's book on the Mormons, and I really only got up to the point where Joseph Smith dies. And that was a very it was very interesting, like the history of the Mormons, which is something that I'm planning on asking Kwaku about here, because I'm wondering, like, what I know about it versus what he knows about it. I'm kind of wondering how that differs. Well, I have the app, so theoretically it should work. Okay, yeah, it should work there, Kwaku. I don't know what to tell you. All I can do is give him the link. Let's see. Skype. Let me pull up my Skype. Maybe he needs Skype. Oh, what? My Skype name.
Is here.
Fletch is here. Holy shit, Fletch is here. Let's see. Let me pull up cancel. Let me pull up my Mormon book. my Book O Mormon.
Do you want the actual one?
No, I mean, I was just gonna read it from here. So the history of Mormonism is very, very interesting. Basically, in what was it, like the 1820s or so, you had Joseph Smith as a young kid, as a teenager. What he did was he would make up stories about the Indians in the surrounding area. He would make up stories about their cities and everything like that. And what eventually happened is that, he got mixed up in this whole treasure finding thing, right? Where he would use these seer stones to find people's treasure or their property or whatever. He would try to find them. And using these seer stones, he committed fraud, and he got caught, and he got tried in a court in Bainbridge, New York, where he admitted to defrauding people. And then, was it like 18 months later or something like that, after he pled guilty to defrauding people, he ends up finding these golden plates. And at this point, history gets a little weird about what happened, because apparently there's this thing called the first vision that is rather odd, because the official story right now from the Mormons or from the Latter-day Saints, it has, I guess, the most recent version of the vision, but that's not what the original vision. Oh, wait, hold on. Here we go. Hello. Yeah, you're a little vertical. Oh no, well no, you're uh, I don't know. It's kind of weird because you're landscape, but you're vertical as you're landscaping.
You know we can't hear him, right?
Yeah.
Oh my god, it's GEception on the screen.
I'm not exactly sure. Hold on, I gotta change my audio settings because nobody can hear you right now.
We can't
Well,
see
yeah,
you.
sorry. I had went ahead and started to go live, and plus, right, and my camera got all messed up. Hold on.
Oh, no problem.
Audio,
Okay.
camera. Nope, this guy. Okay, and let me HDMI.
Okay. Let's see.
Properties deactivate.
We can hear him, just so he knows.
Yeah, he knows now.
Okay.
There we go. Okay, now let me get you added to the scene real quick. NDI source.
BigZebra.com said if you have an infinite number of GEs, one of them will get the settings right eventually. Because if you look at the screen,
Yeah.
it goes.
Oh crap! Wait, do I need to? Let's see. I can't. I can't hear you now. I don't know if you changed something.
Oh no. Okay. No, you can't hear me. I can hear
Oh
me out of
crap!
the YouTube.
Maybe.
I opened the website.
Oh, you
So,
guys can hear him, but I can't hear him.
huh.
That's weird.
Well, let's see.
Oh.
There he is. Did you hear him on your side?
Yeah, I hear him.
We can still hear him.
Oh, can you?
Oh man, sorry I brought so much technical difficulties to this.
Yeah, we can hear him. You can hear him.
Okay. Properties. Hold on.
And is my camera still strange? Is it still?
Yeah. It's still a little odd.
Because if I go like the opposite way, then it'll still be cut off. Correct?
I don't know. I'll have to. I guess I kind of need to load you in here. Hold on. Let's see. Skype. Oh, yeah, that's right. Skype doesn't like to play well. Let's see. We'll do display capture because apparently that's the only way.
Yes, sir. My laptop, like desktop camera, is just being terrible, so I had to switch to phone.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah. So I also would have used the laptop, but it's just not working.
Nope.
It's echoing, so
Yeah. I need to plug in headphones. I'm working things out, honey.
Okay.
Let's see. Let's get rid of that. Right there. Let's see. What is Ross, that one. Properties. Oh yeah, it's the wrong thing. Okay. Well, apparently it can only capture the one desktop. There you go.
And I am.
Hold on. I should be able to like do some magic here.
Huh.
Let's see. Transform. There we go.
We're getting closer.
Yeah, we are definitely getting closer. Okay. Let's see. Right now your camera's not working. Is that
Yeah, on the laptop, it just won't it won't
okay?
project, or I don't know. Like it's a 2017 Mac, but maybe I got to get a new one.
Okay. There we go. Let me... Okay, now there should be no more echoing. All right.
So you guys can see me and everything.
You're frozen on the thing, but we can see the last image of you.
Okay. Darn.
Hold on. Let's see. Let's see. I've got you in my recents, so I think that I should be able to call you back. You want me to try to hang up and call you back?
That may work.
Okay. Let me try that real quick.
Okay.
Okay. Oh.
So should I hang up as well?
Maybe because I clicked the end thing and apparently it did not end.
Okay, let's try this then one more time.
Call. Okay, there we go. Call ended. All right, hold on. Let me restart this because there we go. All right, let me try calling him. Can I call? Call free on Skype. All right. Let's see.
All right. Okay. Let's see. Man, this is so jank.
He's not frozen now.
Nope. Nope. That's right, honey. He's not frozen.
Charisma in the chat said technical difficulties. The stream.
Okay. All right. Well, I've got you up now, disoriented or not. So
I can't even. I guess I'm looking at you through the laptop because I can't see you through the Skype.
yeah. I was trying to turn on. Oh, there. Wait. Let's see. I think you see me now?
I do. Yes, I do.
Awesome.
You're all turned around, but
yeah,
that's okay.
You're turned around for me too, but I got you corrected on the screen.
Perfect. All right. Well, great. Let's have the conversation. Sorry to your audience that it took so long. I had to figure out this technology stuff. So
okay. All right. So, thank you, Kwaku, for coming and talking to me today. That's it's really awesome of you to stop by. I have to say, I've been watching you on the what was previously the Three Mormons channel and now the Saints Unscripted channel for a while.
Okay. Yeah, and I do. So it's actually Kwaku. Fun fact. So it's pronounced Kwaku.
Oh,
And,
Kwaku. I'm so
yeah,
sorry.
It's okay. No, it's okay. And then, yeah. So I do. Well, actually, I don't do Saints Unscripted anymore. I've left the show, and I'm starting a new show soon that comes out. It's another church show, and then I do the Kwaku channel as well. So, yes, the Latter-day Saint YouTube. We're all over it.
Oh, okay. Is there any particular reason why you left the Saints Unscripted, or was it just do you guys like move hosts out of that regularly?
So I was on the show for the longest. I helped start it, but I just kind of felt like it was time to move on. Let someone else go in, and it's like creative juices. You know what I mean? You work on something for a while, and then you feel like it's run its course, at least your involvement. And so you go on to something else, and so that's just what I did.
Okay, cool. And I'm guessing you're happy with everything that over there. Like there's no bad blood or anything like that, of course, right?
No, yeah. So we're all friends. Some of the people in Saints Unscripted are going to be on this new show. But the new show is very scripted. It's very, very scripted. So, yeah, you'll know it when it comes out. It'll be sort of hard to miss if you are kind of perusing Mormon YouTube. You won't be able to miss it. So,
okay, cool. I can't wait to see what you guys got. So what prompted all this was I saw a video of yours on the and I'm gonna tell you right up front, I'm horrible with names. Kwaku.
Yeah, Kwaku.
Right.
Yeah.
Kwaku.
So it's like Quaker, but instead of you say oo.
Right. So I was trying to get the pronunciation in my head so I don't mess it up. I've been trying to do better with that. But so what prompted me wanting to talk to you was seeing a video where you say that atheists should become Mormons, or I guess now it would be Latter-day Saints. Which can you explain that to me? Like why was there a shift in terminology?
Oh, so it's not much. We've always been called Latter-day Saints. So in the Doctrine and Covenants, Christ says, "Thus shall my church be called the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints," and he calls his people Latter-day Saints. The Mormon just became the nickname in the 19th century when Joseph Smith was around because of the Book of Mormon. But we've never technically been called Mormons. That's always just been a nickname. We're technically always been called Latter-day Saints. Just people don't know that. So we've said, okay, we should probably let people know that we're not actually called Mormons. It's a fine nickname. It kind of distinguishes us from the rest of Christianity. But technically, we're called Latter-day Saints, and so we just wanted to make sure people do know the real name of our church.
Okay, that's cool. I just I know that you guys had a shift, in terminology on how to refer to Latter-day Saints, and so I always try to be very mindful of that. So, anyways, so I saw that video of yours, and I really wanted to talk to you about like your faith and your faith and how you came to be there. So I'm just kind of curious, can you give us just sort of a quick rundown as to what convinced you to become a Mormon, to become a Latter-day Saint?
Yes. I see that I'm not on here anymore. I guess it's just too hard. But
Oh yeah, your video cut out, and so I just sort of flipped you around and everything like that, and instead of bothering you about anything. So if you want to come back on video, that's fine either way.
Oh, am I on right now? It looks like I should be.
Oh
Nope.
well, it's just your icon on Skype.
Did that change anything?
No.
Darn. We tried here. Huh? Yeah, maybe Skype just doesn't like this whole YouTube thing. Let's see.
That's fine. We're talking, and I mean, I have a representation of you up on the thing. It's fine.
Okay, cool. So, well, basically, I became a Latter-day Saint, joined the church. I was raised sort of just a normal American Christian, and then I eventually felt that the Book of Mormon was something I believed in, and I joined the church, and that's pretty much the short story. I
Okay.
just believed in it and got on board.
Was there any one certain thing that I guess convinced you of the truth or
Um,
the truth of Mormonism?
Well, for me, it was that I already believed in God, and there's a couple different things, but to me, one of the biggest things was baptism for the dead and the kingdoms of heaven, knowing
Mhm.
that God has a plan for all people, even if they weren't in the right religion in this life, that people aren't just damned to hell if they have the wrong church. So to me, that was a really big thing that helped me sort of go on in that journey.
Okay. All right. So, and I'm pulling off of my list of questions right now. How do you know that like the Church of Latter Day Saints is the true church?
Right. So, the word "no" to me is a it means a bunch of different things, right? It's kind of one of those words that can be defined in multiple ways. You look up what it means, and then you got to look up what that means, look up what that means. I just say that I believe, I strongly believe, and to me that's good enough. To say that I know that it's true is what does that even mean? Like, yes, the church is true in the sense that it is true that the church exists. The church is true in that I believe it has the priesthood authority of God that no other church has, but it doesn't mean that the church is perfect, right? So these are all kind of different, like they're sort of undefinable words. So I just say I strongly believe, and when I say I know, that's what I mean. Like I'm convinced that we have the priesthood authority and that our church is given to us by heaven.
Okay. Um, did any part like of the history of Mormonism like play into whether or not you consider it to be true or you believed it?
Um, yeah, so I mean, I did when I joined the church. I looked up the history of the church. Learning about Joseph Smith and Martin Harris and Oliver Cowdery and Emma Smith and all these people who founded the church, and um, I was just convinced by their testimonies. I found myself believing the account. I believed that Joseph was telling the truth. I believed that the 3 witnesses of the Book of Mormon were telling the truth, and that the 8 witnesses of the Book of Mormon were telling the truth. And because of that, I was on board.
Okay. So I guess it just it confuses me because like there's that concept in Mormonism of the Latter Day Saint church
You can say
of
Mormonism; it's fine. Don't
okay
worry
okay
about it. Yeah.
um the this idea of the first vision, and I'm wondering, can you tell me what you know about this first vision? I'm guessing that's what you're talking about when you're referencing like uh Joseph Smith and his experience and what brought him the Book of Mormon.
Right. So when we use the term like restoration, and that describes the first vision, the appearance to Joseph from Moroni, and all of those things together. And so, really, the first vision is what it is Joseph Smith was 14 years old, and he went into the woods to pray to figure out what he should do in life religiously, and he was appeared to by God and Jesus Christ and numerous angels, and they essentially told him not to join any of the churches, but to wait for further instruction. That's essentially what the first vision was. So there are 9 different accounts of the first vision. Some are by Joseph himself, the others are by other people writing down what Joseph said. And we kind of just harmonize those together, and sort of we can sort of tell what really happened. It seems to be that Joseph was trying to figure out what happened during the first vision for quite a bit of time. You're a 14-year-old boy, and you see bright lights and beings come speak to you. It's probably going to make you, pass out and do a number of things. But most people wouldn't know how to handle that. And essentially, it actually wasn't until a later on vision what we call the vision and a scripture section, which is called Doctrine and Covenants 76, where Joseph Smith is appeared to by God and Jesus and angels and a number of people in the spirit world who have died, and he gets to see what happens to those who die after they leave this world. And after that, he realizes, okay, I already know this happened to me somewhat before, so I'm going to write down exactly how the first vision happened. So usually the first vision, I think it's the 1838 account that most people read online, actually came after he had his second vision, which he needed to go back and specify each thing written out. So it depends on which account you're reading, but not all of the accounts are from Joseph. And I usually just read the ones from Joseph because it's the most accurate, because he was his experience.
Right. I mean, see, what's tough for me is that these visions aren't like, oh, he could just, be interpreting it a different way. And not only that, but the accounts from other people that he supposedly told are wildly different. So, like for instance, have you read the account from Willard Chase?
The Willard Chase first vision account?
Yes.
Okay, let me look that up here. Because there's 9 different ones, so I'm not sure the author of each one, but I just want to make sure. So this looks like it's the 1827 account. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it looks like this is the 1827 account. I'm not sure what's wildly different from the 1838 account. Like, I don't see anything that's different really.
Okay. So I mean, you've laid out what the official version of the account was, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's what you did earlier. So let me read then what the account is. So this is coming from Willard Chase. He says, in the month of June 1827, Joseph Smith, I guess that's senior, related to me the following story, that some years ago a spirit had appeared to Joseph, his son, in a vision and informed him that in a certain place there was a record on plates of gold, and that he was the person that must obtain them, and this he must do in the following manner. On the 22nd of September, he must repair to the place where he deposited this manuscript, dressed in black clothes and riding a black horse with a switched tail, and demand the book in a certain name. And after obtaining it, he must go directly away and neither lay it down nor look behind him. They accordingly fitted out Joseph with a suit of black clothes and borrowed a black horse. He repaired to the place of deposit and demanded the book, which was in a stone box, unsealed, and so near the top of the ground so that he could see one end of it. And raising it up, took out the book of gold, but fearing someone might discover where he got it, he laid it down to place back the top stone as he found it, and turning around, to his surprise, there was no book in sight. He again opened the box, and in it saw the book, and attempted to take it out, but was hindered. He saw in the box something like a toad, which soon assumed the appearance of a man, and struck him on the head. Not being discouraged at trifles, he again stooped down and strove to take the book, when the spirit struck him again, and knocked him 3 or 4 rods, and hurt him prodigiously. After recovering from his fright, he inquired why he could not obtain the plates, to which the spirit made reply, because you have not obeyed your orders. So I don't remember a toad transforming into a man and then beating Joseph Smith in the middle of the woods in the official account. And
so it looks like the Willard Chase account is not of the first vision, but he's speaking of the Moroni visitation. And so the first vision account and the Moroni visitation are different events. They're a number of years apart. And so it may be under first vision from whatever website you're looking at, but they just have the chronology wrong. So there were no plates in the first vision account. It also says he was 21 here, which is about when he had the Moroni visitation, and not when he got the plate, not when he had the first vision. So Moroni is the one who appears to Joseph and tells him to go find plates. First vision is a number of years before that, where there's no Moroni, it's just the Father and the Son. So whatever website you're reading, I think they just have the history wrong. They just are sort of putting it all together.
Hmm.
But what we see here is Willard Chase he's not a member of the church, so he's relaying a story that he said Joe Smith Sr. said, and Joe Smith Sr. said that Joseph Smith said. So it's three people separated. It seems to be antagonistic, and it's not necessarily a first or second witness. It's just kind of just some dude. So I wouldn't hold this as actually an account of the church or even an account by Joseph Smith or even Joe Smith Sr. It just seems to be some dude.
Yeah. Well, no, I wasn't trying to make it seem like it was by Joseph Smith. I think it's good for you to just go off the ones that Joseph Smith himself actually did. It's just the
this doesn't seem to be about the first vision.
Well, this is from the book the Mormons by David Fitzgerald.
So it looks like he's quoting Willard Chase, but from what I can find, Willard Chase was never a church member or a church leader. Mm-hmm. He was just some guy, just some dude from the 19th century. So you can find a number of quotes about Joseph Smith and his visions from other people at the time, just people who were living in Palmyra. But, that's just sort of just some people, right? So if you're going to you want to figure out what Joseph actually claimed, or even what his immediate acquaintances claimed, you would probably go to the 3 or 8 witnesses. But Willard Chase, if he's commenting on the first vision, he seems to be giving the events of the gold plates vision, which are different visions. I don't really know what to say besides this is just some dude and he seems to be mixing up his stories.
Well, it might be Willard Chase that's mixing up the stories, but I've followed the references that David Fitzgerald is using here, and it definitely goes back to this is recorded as a first vision account in 1827 by Willard, from Willard Chase. It's recounting it. So
I guess and David Fitzgerald, he's the hysterical Jesus guy, right?
Hysterical Jesus?
Historical?
Yes, historical.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah, historical.
Yeah, I haven't read his book, but I think I'm not sure. I've never heard of any books he's written on our church. He may have, but it just seems to be. I would recommend Richard Bushman. His book is called Rough Stone Rolling. It's considered among Mormons and non-Mormon academics like the best book you could ever find about Joseph Smith's life, the good and the bad. And that's like the one, people from Mormon professors to Zelf on the Shelf to everyone quotes it. So it's pretty objective, and some people say it strengthened my faith, some people say it destroyed my faith. You can kind of just take your pick. But
right.
This Willard account is just sort of, I don't know, just seems to be mixing up the stories here.
Okay. Well, so if it is a mix-up, then it's a mix-up on Willard Chase's part and not a mix-up on my source or anybody else's source, it seems.
It seems to be Willard Chase was probably asked, what do you know about Joseph Smith and the visions? And he was like, oh, yeah, there's the gold plates. And that's probably, he was referencing that. And they seem to be asking about the first vision, and he sort of conflated them. And then it looks like David Fitzgerald found the quote from the 19th century and put it in the book. So, and that actually happens quite a bit. Mormon history is really hard to recount, especially because in the 1980s, we had a guy named, and you may have covered him on your show, but his name was, oh boy, how am I blanking on the guy's name? He's called the Mormon pipe bomber. His name is Mark Hoffman, and Mark Hoffman was a member of the church who left the church, and he was known as one of the best fraudsters in American history. He was like creating documents that were purported to be from the founding fathers, and he was tricking academics at Ivy League schools. He was like making up information in American history, and he was tricking people at like Yale and Stanford and things like that. And so he ended up creating a couple documents One is called the Salamander Letter. The other is called the Anthon Transcript. He made up some fake documents that were purported to be from early church history. And people believed it, and some of the church leaders bought it, and he kept coming up with them. And so it was leading a lot of people out of the church because it made it seem like a lot of the Joe Smith history was really, really far-fetched and insane, and it was really strange. And so they eventually found out he was lying, and he was making them up, and he was going to go to prison. So he created pipe bombs, and he put them in Steve Christensen, who was a rich LDS bishop in Salt Lake City, put it in his mailbox and killed him, and then killed his friend Kathy Sheets. And he's actually still alive. He's in the Utah State Penitentiary right now. And this is in the 1980s, I believe. And so there was so much mix-up of Mormon history at that time. We're still actually trying to figure out sometimes what's true and what's not, and what is a Hoffman forgery and what's not a Hoffman forgery, which is why there's like a gap in Mormon academia. There was 19th century onward, and then there was like this strange kerfuzzle in the 80s and 70s, or I think the 80s and 90s, and we kind of had to do a complete do-over of church history because we had embraced so many things that were Hoffman forgeries. And so, yeah, I would tell your audience, look up Mark Hoffman. It's actually a really, really interesting story. I think it was not CSI, but one of those like crime shows did it like an episode about him. But yeah, like I would tell you, like, look it up. Just look up Mark Hoffman forgeries, and you'll see that you guys may have read some stuff that you thought was from Mormon history. It was actually a Hoffman forgery. And so it's important to keep in mind, because I've had some people reach out to me and say, what about this? And they go, yeah, it was a Hoffman forgery. And he was a criminal.
Okay. I mean, to be quite honest, the Mormon organization, or the Latter-day Saint organization, it doesn't really, I mean, they have no shortage of like con men that infiltrate and use the religion in order to carry out their schemes. Wouldn't you say?
Well, I mean, Utah has some of the lowest crime rate in the country. And like, Mormon places seem to be pretty honest, intelligent groups. So like, we don't have, I'm not really sure what you mean in terms of like, are Mormons con men, which seems to be that, financial fraud and crime, and those things are pretty low in Mormon areas.
Well, no, I wasn't trying to suggest that like all Mormons are con men or anything like that. I was just saying that there's no shortage of finding those types of people that get into like, pretty high positions in Mormon history. I'm not talking about like in the 1980s or anything somewhat recent. I'm talking about, like during the Joseph Smith's days, because there was an incident where he had a guy. He had a guy that was like a land procurement. He was put in charge of land procurement, and he went out and he quote unquote procured land for the Mormons at the time. Went out and procured it, but he did it fraudulently. He made up land certificates and everything like that, and everybody that was working the lands that they were on, they thought they owned, they actually didn't own, because he fraudulently made up the land certificates. So I mean, that's one example of multiple. But I mean, also, I mean, there's Joseph Smith himself. Because prior to him finding the golden plates, he was convicted of being a con man and a fraudster in Bainbridge, New York.
Well, first, I guess I would ask, who is the guy before you're talking about?
I cannot remember. I'll see if I can find his name. This was before they moved. I think it was around. Was it the Kirkland Safety Society Bank was also a very big plunder, back then, because that was something that Joseph Smith himself headed up, and it was a total fraud bank that he set up there.
Well, no, yeah, I mean, we can talk about the Kirkland Safety Society. I guess I'm just talking about, okay, well, it's fine if you can't think of the name of I don't know what story you're referring to, and so I can't
Yeah,
I
yeah.
don't have I can't respond if I don't know, but I believe before that you said Joseph Smith convicted of fraud. I think you're thinking of it's the 1826 trial in South Bainbridge, right?
hmm
So he actually wasn't convicted because there wasn't actually a trial; it was an examination. So it was basically a public examination of Joseph Smith, um, and that's really about it. There was no like, there was really nothing that legally
Well,
classified him or considered him to be a fraud because it was a public examination, and they kind of just dropped it after a while because some of the testimonies of the witnesses of Joseph Smith their testimonies weren't recorded on paper correctly, and there was a lot of mix up with a lot of things, and so it kind of became a monkey trial, what you'd call, or some sort of banana trial, and it was sort of dropped, and no one really cared. So yeah, a lot of people will say, "Oh, he was a convicted con man or convicted fraud," but that's sort of a thing like South Park just kind of said, and everyone ran with it. But when you look at the glass-looking trial in 1826, it just seemed to be they wanted to examine what he was doing with seer stones and glass looking and all that stuff, and they just said, we think he's kind of a weirdo, but that's about it, and they all kind of moved on with their lives.
I mean that doesn't really mesh with that doesn't mesh with the whole reason why he was brought up to court anyways, because he was supposed to be finding this other person's treasure. I can't remember their name. He was supposed
Yeah,
to
so
be he was supposed to be finding their treasure, and he didn't, and so they were like, he's a fraudster, and they brought him up on charges. And I mean, it's not so much that he was like convicted or anything, but it's the fact that in court he confessed to being a fraudster.
No, so that was Josiah Stoll, and Joseph actually had a reputation already for being able to find things with seer stones. Right, this is sort of 19th century folk magic. If you ever look up a divining rod, in fact, you could look up a divining rod on YouTube right now. Like your audience, open a new tab and look at divining rod, and you'll see people even today using it. So there are things that's called like folk magic. What some people have said is Joseph would use certain stones, and what most likely was going on was he was there was some sort of like magnetic pull with certain metals he was trying to use, and that's how he was able to find them. But that seems to be the explanation, because Joseph Smith wasn't the only person doing what's called glass looking in the 19th century. It was a little more common than we like to think. So Josiah Stoll actually sought out Joseph Smith and said, "Hey, can you help me find some lost objects?" Joseph couldn't find them, and so Josiah got upset and brought him to court and said he's a glass looker, he's a disorderly person. Several witnesses said, "Hey, look, Joseph was able to find stuff for me," but nowhere in court did Joseph ever say I'm a fraud or I made it up. I couldn't find it. So yeah, you can't find anywhere. And I've never seen anything from the 1826 trial where he says I was a fraud or I was a con man or anything like that. I think that's sort of a modern reinvention of the trial. But honestly, when you go look at the trial, it's sort of underwhelming. There's not much going on there.
Well, I don't know. I mean, we have court documents where it shows where he did confess to being a fraudster. So, or at least that's my understanding of it.
Well, can I ask where you're reading that from?
Well, it's the same book, David Fitzgerald's The Mormons, but I mean he does have his work cited. Before I move on, the guy who was he was dubbed by Joseph Smith to be the chief land agent, that was Isaac Galland.
Yeah. So well, before we go on, I think so are you pulling most of this from David Fitzgerald's book?
Well, I mean, this is the book that I have on Mormon history. So, but I mean, like I said, he has references, to substantiate the things that he's saying, and I'm trying to get to the court documents right now. But
yeah, because I can comment if we're looking at the documents themselves, like what's written down and what the actual transcript is, but I don't, I looked up David Fitzgerald. He just kind of seems to be, not.
Nuts.
I don't see much academic praise for him. He kind of seems to be like an Amazon self-published kind of author.
No, he is not an Amazon self-published author. He goes through actual publishers. While his work isn't peer-reviewed or put through any kind of academic press, they're very well researched. But
yeah, then I would. So my personal opinion is, at least when it comes to church history or religious history or theology, I always try to go for Oxford, UNC Chapel Hill, like the things that are pretty peer-reviewed and trustworthy. If it's not that, I usually kind of toss it away. And especially because he's quoting someone for the first vision, but is giving things from the Golden Plates accounts, I would probably just say it's an untrustworthy book.
Well, I mean, it's not that the book is untrustworthy. I mean, if that guy was mixing up the first vision, I mean, I followed the references for Fitzgerald in his book, and it leads directly to an Institute for Religious Research website where it says changing the first vision accounts, 1827 first vision accounts. So, I mean, his references check out. So it's not.
The IRR, Institute for Religious Research, is actually just it's one guy. It's not actually an institute. It's not peered with any college or anything like that. It's just some dude. I've actually heard about the IRR quite a bit. They're really they're called a counter cult ministry. So they're a Christian website that spaces their time going against Mormons, Jehovah's Witnesses, and Seventh-day Adventists. But that's about it. It's really just like one dude's blog. It's not anything that's peer reviewed, like no important people are involved in it. It's just untrustworthy.
Well, I mean, to be honest, it's kind of hard to do like Mormon history in general unless you're already part of the faith. I mean, like the 1827 or 1830, whichever, that first account by Joseph Smith that he wrote in his own personal book. I mean, it was kept under lock and key for 130 years. And the only reason why it actually came to light was because they forgot about it. And somebody put it in their, I want to say it was like their dissertation or something. And they didn't realize that was being put out there, and they didn't even confirm it until they absolutely had to confirm it. Not to mention the fact that I've heard from several ex-Mormons that the Mormon church, as soon as you start investigating stuff that seems to be contradictory to the Mormon message, they end up getting excommunicated or fired, from being a Mormon historian. So, I mean, I would say that if you're looking for like peer-reviewed research, like scholarly historical research on this kind of stuff, maybe the Mormon church should kind of like open up their documents and stuff and allow people to actually do the research that don't already agree with the position.
Well, so I would probably say first that there's a lot to unpack there, but with going back to the trial, I'm not actually aware of a transcript of the trial, and that seems to be one of the reasons why we don't know much about it, because the record keeping of the trial wasn't good. So, like I said, like any sort of like Mormon history, it can be difficult, but not really that difficult. So I'm looking right here, Paul Reeves' book by Oxford University Press, Religion of a Different Color, tracing the history of race and Mormonism. I'm looking here at Harvard and Belknap's The Mormon Jesus by John G. Turner, Rough Stone Rolling, Vintage Press by Richard Bushman. So I'm looking at a lot of peer-reviewed Mormon books going through the history of Mormonism, and they've all kind of got the thumbs up from the academic sort of scholarly circles. So to say that Mormon history is bad because the church doesn't open up the books, about Joseph Smith's history itself, he published when he was alive in the Pearl of Great Price, Joseph Smith History, where he tells his experience with the first vision all the way with Moroni and everything like that. That's been publicly printed in all of our scriptures since Joseph Smith was alive. So I'm not sure what story you're referring to where someone found it and they had to come clean with it, but Joseph Smith, by his own hand, like wrote that in, made sure it was a part of the scriptural canon when they were putting it on the printing presses, and let everybody read it. And that was actually, this is one of the conversion tools they used, was Joseph Smith's own admission. So yeah, the first vision account, all that's been readily, widely available publicly for everyone to read since he was alive. So I'm not quite sure what story you're referring to, but it seems to be, I just don't know what story you're referring to. It's publicly open since he was alive, and that's just kind of the way it's been.
Well, so David Fitzgerald has a actual document, documenting the trial, courtesy of the clerk of the Board of Supervisors, Chenango County Office Building, Norwich, New York. As far as I know, it was found there much later. So I mean, we didn't have any court records about it until this was found.
And you're talking about the transcript of the 1826 trial?
It says, it just says court record of Joseph Smith's March 20th, 1826 trial for fraud, being a disorderly person and an imposter. And it notes how it says Joseph Smith, the glass looker, 1826, and then courtesy of, and it's the citation for where it was pulled from.
And are you looking at that transcript right now, or are you looking at the source for it?
Well, I mean, I'm looking at the copy of it in the book, but I'm sure that I could find it online. But I mean, I'll have to look after we talk here, and I can get back to you.
So I think I see what you're looking at on josephsmithpapers.org. People versus Chenango. Yeah, it just seems to be, I see a historical introduction of what it's supposed to be about, but I don't see any, there doesn't seem to be any quoting of the individuals, dialogue back and forth. It doesn't seem to be a transcript in that way. It just seems to be a little summary of what happened, and that's about it. So again, there's no, going back to it, there's nothing you can pull from it that says, oh, well, Joseph admitted to being a con man or anything like that. That doesn't seem to be what's written down. That just seems to be sort of a kind of revisionist history of it. And so like I said, I believe Joseph Smith used seer stones, and I believe they work because I believe God was using them for important works, but I wouldn't use this because some people could take this and go, well, Josiah still sought Joseph out because they already believe that seer stones worked, and that you could use that as an evidence for Mormonism. I don't do that. I don't use it as an evidence against. I just think it's kind of a fictive history that isn't, frankly, just kind of underwhelming. There's not much here. It just kind of, if you want to go after go after Joseph Smith, there's much better things to choose from. People often, I always say, if you want to, if I ever went anti-Mormon and want to take down the church, I know where to hit the church. But a lot of people don't, and they go after just some of the stuff that's, it's just not the best stuff to really go after Joseph. If you wanted to go after him, the early stuff isn't where it is, honestly.
Okay, so where is it?
Well, of course, I'm not going to say.
Well, why wouldn't, I mean, you said that there are better places to hit like Joseph Smith. I'm just kind of curious what else is there, because I mean, one thing that I don't understand about it is that Joseph Smith was pretty hard up on the whole polygamous marriage doctrine that he supposedly received from God. And the other Mormons, especially Joseph Smith's own wife, was very against it. And I mean, there was a pretty big divide in the whole polygamous marriage thing early on. And of course, now I would assume that Mormons don't, or Latter-day Saints don't, hold to the whole polygamous marriage. But that whole thing, how that, just in general, how the Mormon doctrine or the Mormon beliefs change seems kind of weird to me.
Yeah, so polygamy happened in the church, and that doesn't really bother me. Polygamy is, I like to look at it this way: if there is no God, all marriage really is a social construct. It's two people who believe that they want to be together. And if there is no God, then polygamy can be fine. If there's no God, then if a guy wants to have multiple wives and everyone consents, there's no problem with that. I mean, honestly, that's what it comes down to. If everyone's consenting, whether it's one guy and one guy, or one guy and three girls, or one girl and five guys, if they're all consenting in this relationship, they're allowed to do so. If there is a God and he wants his church, his people to practice marriage in a certain way, as the creator of marriage, he's allowed to authorize and issue that. So either way, if there is a God or isn't a God, polygamy isn't an inherently bad thing. I think it's something that might make people uncomfortable in Western suburban America. But even today, there are still countries all over the eastern side of the world that practice polygamy. And it might be a taboo, it might make people uncomfortable, but it doesn't mean it's bad. It doesn't mean it's immoral or there's anything inherently wrong with it. So it's like, yeah, it might make you feel weird, but weird doesn't mean bad. It just means different. Like, I can be uncomfortable at a Hindu ceremony as well. It doesn't mean it's bad. It's just different.
Well, I mean, to be clear, I didn't say that it was bad or anything like that. I was actually just talking about how the Mormon doctrine changes, and how, like, because like polygamy is just one particular topic. I mean, we could go on the racism in the early church, or we could go on how they were very anti-LGBT, which I have to say, I commend you for kind of going against the grain of the Mormon church and being very supportive of the LGBTQ community.
Well, I mean, like I said, I believe everyone's got their own, like, my view is sort of this. I can't, like, people will say, like, hey, why should I become a Mormon? I just say, I can't make you become a Mormon. If you read it and you believe in it, then join. If you don't, then you don't, and you can live your life and do what you want. So I know that Islam, Catholicism, Mormonism, all the religions have kind of the same Abrahamic strict stance on gender and sex. But ultimately, everyone's got their own life to live, and you fall in love with who you fall in love with. And if both people are consenting, that's your life. You fall in love with who you want to fall in love with. You sleep with who you want to sleep with. Doesn't concern me very much, and that's just kind of how it's like we all, like, you're probably never going to become a Mormon, right? I don't think that's ever going to happen. I'll probably never be an atheist, and that's just kind of how it is, right? We don't really have any holy wars or anything like that going on. I just say live and let live, and Mormon history can be tricky to some people, but like I said, if you think it's weird, you reserve that right to think it's weird. I think it's really interesting and cool. I think learning about the Book of Mormon in light of ancient Mesoamerican legends and how they correspond is very, very interesting. I think looking at Joseph Smith, like, on the subject of race, as a hero of, like, a very racially progressive hero. Yes, Brigham Young, I can't say that he was. Joseph Smith ran for president on an anti-slavery platform, lived with a freed woman, Jane Manning James, and wanted to be sealed to her as a brother for eternity. He, in the Book of Mormon, writes about how slavery is a sin and how racism is a sin. It's the only Abrahamic scripture that specifically says racism by way of skin color is a sin. In a time in which, the country was basically white supremacy, what ran amok. He said he was appeared to by an ancient Native American angel who said that the Indians were the chosen people and that the white Christian people were actually off and weren't on the mark. So racially, looking at the history of Mormonism, it's pretty astounding. Joseph Smith if he was making it all up and he was making things up, it seemed he was trying to piss off sorry for the language, trying to tick off the right people.
You've never seen my videos? Trust me, that's tame.
It seemed like he was trying to make the right people upset, and he was purposely giving the finger to sort of white supremacist Christian America. Now, you're not going to get me here defending Brigham Young in terms of race. Most of the racist quotes in our church history come from Brigham Young, not Joseph Smith. But Joseph was the prophet of the Restoration. All of our scriptures are really from him and all that stuff. And Brigham Young's racism doesn't negate Joseph's visions or anything like that. I still believe Brigham Young was a prophet. Don't believe he was perfect, in the same way that Paul the Apostle was kind of sexist toward women. I think Brigham had some things to work on with race. But the Book of Mormon still stands, and the revelations of Joseph, I still believe them, and Brigham doesn't really negate those. So,
Well,
yeah.
so the whole prophet status, and with Brigham Young, I mean, he would have had to have gotten word from God in order to make like rules for the Mormon Church, right?
Yes. But the thing is, the church is like the prophets of the church are not infallible. So there's the saying that Catholics believe the Pope is infallible, but none of them believe it, and Mormons believe the prophet is fallible, but none of them believe it. Right. All throughout the scriptures, the prophets are really, all their weaknesses are shown. Alma the Younger's apostasy is shown in the Book of Mormon. Nephi's pride is shown. Paul's mistakes are shown. Really, all the prophets, we see their follies. We see Jonah's blatant prejudice toward the people of Nineveh, and we don't have we don't have this idea that they're supposed to be perfect. They're supposed to be very, very flawed, and they're supposed to make a ton of mistakes. And unfortunately, we don't like we look at Mormon history and say, oh well, Brigham Young did this wrong, but it's kind of have like a so attitude. It's like, oh yeah, he messed up sometimes. That's all right. We don't claim that the prophets have to be infallible to be prophets, right? So if we were to define prophets that way and say our prophets are the spokesman for God 100% of the time and aren't making mistakes, then there would be flaws. There would be holes to pick in that argument. But we're making the claim that God chooses very flawed, fallible leaders, puts them in charge of his church to continue to build the kingdom of God, knowing that they're going to make mistakes in and out of the church. And that's where our religion is. So we accept a flawed leader model. And so a lot of the arguments against that are coming from a presupposition of an infallible prophetic leader model, but we don't embrace that. We believe they're flawed.
Okay. Well, it's just that it seems like a very ad hoc sort of thing, from my perspective on this, because it kind of seems like, you had a prophet that, said some racist things, and then you're like, we're not perfect. And the prophet, although he speaks for God 100% of the time, he messes up. And I guess you're saying that like he misheard God or misinterpreted God. Is that what you're saying?
No, so he does. So we don't believe they speak for God 100% of the time.
Okay.
If the prophet said something, thus saith the Lord, or this is the Lord's will, and that proclamation is sustained by the quorum of the 12 apostles, then we believe that is the word of God. That's sort of how we test it. And so it's called official declarations or proclamations.
Right.
So in regard to race, Brigham claimed no revelation from God on his doctrines about race or things he said about different races of people, namely black people. That was about it. And Orson Pratt, an early apostle with Brigham Young, actually contested Brigham and said, this is not the doctrine of God. This is wrong. And the apostles fought about race quite a bit. So, it's not as if we claim, hey, God told Brigham Young this and this about race. Brigham didn't even claim that. It was pretty clear that it was just his opinion.
Well, I mean, you got to admit his opinion set the tone for the Mormon Church to be pretty racist up until, what was it, the 70s, when they had to not be racist anymore?
Yeah, no, well, so not really. It's sort of this is what the unfortunate part is. If you look at and I know you're not a Christian, so you have to kind of bear with me here for a minute, but if you look at the history of American churches in general, in regard to racism, we're pretty low at the poll. All right. So Southern Baptists are one of the biggest denominations in the United States, and their whole denomination was formed to be out of the Confederacy because they wanted to keep slaves. In 1924, you had to be Protestant to join the Ku Klux Klan, and there's an estimated height of 6 million members at the time. That's the largest homegrown terrorist organization in American history, is the Ku Klux Klan, specifically created by and for Protestants. Catholics played a very big hand in the genocide of Native Americans here on this continent. If you're looking at the role of Christians in the United States and racism, we're pretty low at the poll. I mean, the worst thing we did was not allow black men to hold the priesthood, and that's what every church did. We don't. Our priesthood isn't made up of pastors, rather people who hold a specific ordination. Other churches' priesthood are the actual pastoral leaders, and most churches in America, up until the 60s or 70s, would never allow a black leader. Every church had some form of priesthood ban, but we're the only ones who weren't going out. Not the only ones. We're one of the few who weren't going out and literally persecuting black people or persecuting Asians and so you put it in context. Nothing the church did was really that radical or crazy in regard to what everyone else was doing with race. Pretty radical and crazy. A lot of murder, a lot of bloodshed, a lot of hangings, a lot of burnings. And we're guilty of just not letting black people hold a position. That's really about it. And so it's it's not good. Like, as a black person, I can tell you, I'm not like thrilled. But in regard to, with an intelligent view on American history and race and things that really went down, it's hard to make a claim that Mormonism stands out. Like, our church stands out in racism when, genocide and hanging people and forming a giant, terrorist organization that's goal is to overthrow the government and install a white ethno-state religion. When that's going on, and it's really like, take your pick. It's not. Yeah, I know it's a kind of a sad thing to have to choose one or the other, but that's kind of how American history plays out, and it just kind of is that way.
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, basically, you're saying right now it's like, yeah, we were racist, but we're not that racist. But I mean, it's still racism. Like, I don't know why saying, hey, it's not like we lynched anybody. Like, I don't see, like, I get that you're trying to put it into perspective, but at the same time, it's like
we're saying that like all of America was racist. So expecting Mormons to not be is pretty unfair, especially because God makes clear in the scriptures that he brings his church in the culture of the people. And scriptures always show a narrative of how the culture affects the church every single time. So if you hold Mormons to an expectation that we should shine out of the culture and to an extent that we're almost perfect in that regard, that we don't have cultural influences in our church, we don't even make that claim, and neither do the scriptures. So it's sort of a characterization we don't embrace. That is where people are throwing against us. But it seems to be unfair because we don't even claim that. And so at some point, it sucks, but you kind of have to pick all right, who is worse? That's kind of what you're forced to do, because that's just kind of how American history is. Even removing Mormonism, that's just kind of how it is, right? We celebrate President's Day and we honor George Washington, but the guy tortured people. He was kind of a murderous torturer who tortured slaves, and we still honor him, but kind of not what he should have been doing, right? And I wager that if I were to ask who do you think is a worse person, George Washington or Joseph Smith, you would probably talk more badly about Joseph Smith on your show or in online than you ever have George Washington, right? I get it. It's a show set toward atheism, but we can recognize you focus on that, but obviously worse things happen and more evil people existed, right? So no matter what, history is always a comparison.
Right. Well, I mean, in comparison, George Washington was appointed to run an army to fight for, the freedom of the American colonies, whereas Joseph Smith raised an army and then petitioned the United States to, basically give him universal control over the United States Army.
George Washington, I was referring to torturing. He owned a lot of slaves and tortured a lot of them. He was known as one of the most brutal slave owners, right? That's objectively worse than anything Joseph Smith ever did. Seer stones. Well, who cares in light of torturing people? And so I just say, look, it's you. If you're taking your pick on who's a worse person, that's just how American history is. Even leaving Mormonism out of the equation, that's kind of the hand we're dealt. It's not a hand we'd like to acknowledge. It kind of stinks to think about, but unfortunately, that's just how our country went, and it just kind of has to be that way.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm what I'm noticing is that you're trying to soften, the history of Mormonism by comparing it to, other bad things that have happened in the past. But I really don't think that should make anybody forget or disregard like the obvious, the obvious problems with the origins, not only with the origins of Mormonism, but other things.
Well, I guess I just don't see that there are problems with the origins. I think the origin of the church is a beautiful story. I love to learn about Joseph Smith and how he organized the church and the revelations he got. If to say that it's even on par with the evil things that happen in the country, I think is just so far from the truth. Reality is some of the people were flawed, obviously. That's just the way it is because they were a part of a certain culture, right? I assume, do you have an iPhone?
No, I've got Android.
Android, okay. Well, you probably have a lot of friends that have iPhones, right?
I have to have an iPhone as a matter of my side job here at Godless Engineer, but
Right.
yes.
So, like, because of that, I mean, we also know that iPhones are built in Asia using forced child labor. It's literally Asian child slave labor that builds a lot of our stuff, and we are buying the products of their blood, sweat, and tears of a sort of a tyrannical government that's profiting off of misused capitalism, and we use the products. That's an evil thing. It's an objectively bad thing that we use iPhones. We're all hypocrites, every single one of us. We're like, if you get down to it and you look at us with a presentism and a historical perspective, and you would examine us 200 years from now, we would all look like awful people. We just would. And so it's important to keep that in mind, but it doesn't mean God can't work with those people. If we say, well, why would God choose that prophet? God couldn't choose anyone because every single person is a part of a culture that has really horribly bad ramifications, whether it's using products that come from Asian child slave labor, or it's maybe watching pornography, which has ties to sex trafficking, or it's a number of things. Each person, pretty bad, pretty bad when you get down to it. And that's just kind of the way it is.
I mean, generalizing things like that is not like just because you watch like a porn video doesn't mean you're taking part or contributing to sex trafficking. I feel like that's
I would say yes. I would say any support of it is but even so, it's just like, if nobody was flawed, who could God choose? Right? We look at the sins or the bad things we think are especially bad and go, okay, God can't choose anyone who does those things, but someone else could easily say God can't choose anyone who does those things. Honestly, it just comes down to which one you think is worse because of your own life, and we're kind of the sum of our experiences and the presuppositions we have. But the reality is we're all bad, and if God can't choose anyone who's flawed, then he can't choose anyone. And then this gets into a debate about, well, can God choose people or not? But that's not really the debate at hand. It's what is Mormonism, essentially, is the debate, and is Mormonism true? So when you get down to it, it's just like, people are all flawed. And so I defend Brother Brigham in that sense, that he was a prophet, he was flawed, but God has to choose someone. And if he chose a prophet today, or opposed to a prophet back then, yeah, he's got somebody who was racist back then, but he has someone today who uses the works of child slave labor and watches porn, which is an evil industry, right? It just comes down to that.
I don't consider porn to be an evil industry. But now, before we get into because we got to talking a lot about history here, but I want to get into your video about why atheists should become Latter-day Saints, and I don't want to take up too much more of your time, but could you just give me your thoughts really quick on the church's like serious anti-LGBT stance up until marriage was passed by the Supreme Court, and even now, just recently, they've degraded the severity of the sin of taking part, I guess maybe taking part in LGBTQ behavior or being LGBTQ in general?
Well, the rules have been the same, pretty standard religious Orthodox views in regard to marriage. The church doesn't allow same-sex marriage. Most churches don't. It hasn't really ever changed. The church has never actually said that homosexual attractions are a sin. We don't believe that being gay or lesbian is a sin. The church says that acting upon it would lead to behavior that would not allow you to be exalted. And we believe that to become a god, you have to be in the union of eternal marriage, which is, we believe in a heavenly father and a heavenly mother, and that Adam and Eve marriage is modeled after that. And you have to be in that union to become a god. And two men can't actually become gods because of that, right? That's just not how the eternal order works. And so a same-sex marriage would prevent them from becoming gods. And that's eventually the end game of the church, is to become like God, to become gods. And
Well,
so because of that, they don't have same-sex marriage in the church. However, like the church has embraced what's called fairness for all acts, that there should be no discrimination in housing and employment, and that even a lot of members believe that gay marriage should be legal at the federal level, and that SCOTUS was right to pass the law, and people should be able to choose what they want. And just because you're not part of our church doesn't mean you have to follow our sexual ethics, right?
Well, you have to understand how this is very confusing for me, because the Mormon Church, that Latter-day Saint Church, put millions of dollars into anti-Proposition 8 advertising and like lobbying and everything like that in California to prevent same-sex marriage. So I mean, if that was the actual position, then it seems like they wouldn't have spent so much, resources, manpower, and money on trying to prevent people from the ability to get married, regardless of whether or not they were part of the church.
Yeah, so that was Proposition 8. I think that was in 2008. And in 2008, a lot of the country was against same-sex marriage. You got to remember, when Obama first ran for president and when Clinton first ran, they were both not for same-sex marriage, right?
So I'm not talking about other people. I'm not talking about what the context of the country and everything like that. I'm talking about if what you said was the actual position, like, of the church, that that everybody's just fine doing whatever they want to do, then it seems like they wouldn't have done that. Putting it in context with just everybody else, it doesn't really have a lot of meaning here. What I'm talking about is the church and the internal consistency of the church through time, and it seems to be inconsistent with their messaging, and they seem to change as society changes.
Well, like I said, I mean, I wouldn't say it changes as society changes, because the church's doctrine is still pretty clearly man and woman. But I'm saying that, yeah, the church put forward that in 2008, and even also in Hawaii, and I think 2001 as well, to pass certain laws, or to fund certain measures that to keep marriage between just a man and a woman. And that's what a ton of people were doing. So it's not like it's a change of doctrine. It's just that people don't do that as much anymore. But if your position is one way, and it seems to be that's what the public's opinion is, and a number of people are getting on board with a movement, it's not strange for the church as well to get onto that movement. And then when society says we don't really want that anymore, the church will back off. As long as the doctrine hasn't changes, I don't really see it like inconsistency there. It just seems to be they took advantage of what was a norm at the time, and then when that wasn't a norm, didn't do that thing, but the doctrine didn't change.
I mean, it, like, degrading the seriousness of the sin seems to be a pretty big doctrine change, doesn't it?
No. So the severity of the sin didn't change, and in fact, it's hard to really. We don't have like a tier of sins. Like the worst sin is denying the Holy Ghost, and after that, it's murder, and then after that, it's kind of a toss up. It's just sort of and so the church decided that they're not going to, like, homosexual behavior is not an immediate excommunication. They're going to treat homosexual immorality and heterosexual immorality the same. And so that's really it. These are things we call changes of policy, not changes of doctrine. A change of doctrine is a very, very big thing. A change of policies can change every couple of years. And every policy that changes in the church is really sort of managing the church and its people to prepare for the second coming and building up the kingdom of God on earth. So a number of policies are going to change, but the doctrine doesn't change. And
Right.
that's I would say that's the big thing.
So is the, what is it called, the Mark of Ham? Is that still church doctrine?
So you're thinking, the curse of Cain doctrine.
Or curse of Cain? I thought it was Mark of Ham or something like that.
It kind of there's a couple different ones. So there's Mark of Ham is what some people call it, curse of Ham. Some people call it the curse of Cain. That's because it's a theologically illiterate thing. It was never church doctrine. Some apostles said it, but it was never sustained. And while other apostles said it was true, other apostles at the same time said it's not true. We can actually trace when the curse of Cain doctrine began, and that was actually it looks around the 1300s with the Catholic Church, and then the Protestants picked it up, and then Parley P. Pratt served his mission in the South for our church, picked it up, brought it to Brigham Young. Brigham Young taught it. Other apostles said it's not true. It's never been doctrine of the church. It's just kind of what you call Mormon folklore, and fortunately, it was the folklore that hurt a lot of people. But like I said, you read the Book of Mormon, there's so many examples of that going on with the people where they teach cultural or certain influences that should not be taught, that prophets say, no, this is not true. So,
Right.
like, I believe in Mormonism because I believe in the revelations of Joseph Smith, and I believe in the temple ordinances, and I believe in God and Jesus.
Mhm.
But all those things, all the mistakes in the folklore exist in spite of what Joseph revealed, not in addition to. So it's not a big deal to me. Honestly, it's like, yeah, whatever. So, yeah, some people were racist. That's just kind of the way it is. I grew up in Texas. A black guy named Quake who grew up in the South. Like, trust me, I've heard a lot worse. It's not that big of a deal to me.
Well, I mean, yeah, but you can understand how it would have been a big deal for some people, right? Like that being, the official position. It seemed like until it had to not be. Same thing with the
It was never the
LGBT.
official position. And like I said, like it was never the official position of the church. And
Why weren't if it wasn't the position of the church, why didn't they allow African Americans to attain priesthood status? Like if it wasn't, well, I'm just it really baffles me, because if it wasn't the position of the church, then it seems like they should have allowed African Americans to become, high-ranking priests or whatever level in the church that you can be, that African Americans were restricted from being. It seems like if that wasn't a main part of the doctrine or the belief set of Mormons, then it just doesn't make sense to me,
Well, because the reason for the ban has never been given, but there's actually a couple different things people said. Some people said it was a curse of Cam. Some people said because there were people who were fence sitters in heaven before they came to earth. There were actually a bunch of different proposed theories. And so what I think you might be doing is you're reading about the curse of Cain, and then you're reading about the priesthood ban and just assuming that this influences that. But that's not actually true. It seems to be that the priesthood ban was started with Brigham Young, not Joseph Smith. And then people came up with different explanations as to why there had to be a ban. And people just sort of pick which explanation and go, oh, that must be the reason why. But that's actually not. The church has never given an official reason. And apostles have actually made clear that those are not official reasons. And those are just folklore. Even going back to Orson Pratt, who said to bind the African is to cause the angels in heaven to blush, right? Who was an early apostle with Brigham Young. So again, it wasn't the official position. And if it was, you have to pick which one. You have to pick which folklore was, because a couple different ones proposed. And like I said, it just seemed to be that people were kind of racist. But even so, does a handful of Mormons racism in 1920, does that mean the first vision didn't happen? No. Does that mean the Book of Mormon isn't true? No. Does that mean the vision in D&C 76 didn't occur? No. Some people got stuff wrong, but the revelations of Joseph still stand, and that's what we go by. And if I went by the church, if I just went by what by everything that people said in church history ever, then I would my channel would be much different than it is. But the reality is Mormons don't go by that. We go by the revelations given by Joseph and the teachings of Christ inside, and that's just kind of it.
Okay. Well, we could move on from that, because I know we're kind of pressing on time here. I've titled the stream like "Why Should Atheists Become Latter-day Saints?" and I watched your video on that particular topic, and basically what it seems like is you're saying, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, but let me see if I can get your position right. Atheists should become Mormon because atheists agree that life could exist elsewhere. And because you believe that Yahweh and Jesus are physically in this reality on a different planet somewhere, that means that with the idea that they could have created everything intelligently and we wouldn't know any different, that atheists should become Mormon because that seems to line up with that particular idea. Is that correct?
Um, no, so I'm sort of being a tongue-in-cheek in the video. Like atheists, you could become Mormon. I'm more so saying that the goal of the video is that certain prominent atheists, like Richard Dawkins and others, have said that a godlike creature that could exist would be. Actually, I want to find the actual quote from you for you if I can, so I don't want to misquote him. I want to be as accurate as possible here. Um, um, let's see here. Okay, I think it's the Richard Dawkins intelligent design quote. And do you know which quote I'm referring to?
Oh yeah, I do. I mean, I know the concept and everything like that. I don't need an exact quote, but I mean, I understand like the quote that you're talking about.
Oh yeah. So he said, Ben Stein asked, "What do you think is a possibility that there are intelligent design that might turn out to be the answer to some issues in genetics or evolution?" He said it could come about in the following way. It could be that at some earlier time somewhere in the universe, a civilization evolved by probably some kind of Darwinian means to a very, very high level of technology and designed a form of life that they seeded onto perhaps this planet. Now that is a possibility and an intriguing possibility. And I suppose it's possible that you might find evidence for that if you look at the details of our chemistry, molecular biology. You might find a signature of some sort of designer. And that designer could well be a higher intelligence from elsewhere in the universe. But that higher intelligence would itself have had to come about by some explicable or ultimately explicable process. It couldn't have just jumped into existence spontaneously. That's the point. And I basically compared that to Joseph Smith's King Follett discourse, where he said God was a man who lived on a planet who progressed to a level of understanding and power that he was able to create other planets. And actually, in the book of Abraham, it talks about the gods going onto planets and planting seeds in the ground to create things and putting like the mark of the gods onto people, and that's in our DNA. So I just thought it was interesting that Richard Dawkins is coming up with a theory that was pretty similar to what Joseph Smith actually said in the 19th century, the King Follett Discourse. I believe that was in 1844. Was the King Follett Discourse. So, like I said, it's basically if you take the idea that if there can be a godlike creature that there or some sort of intelligent design that is an embodied being in a different part of the universe, then that's not that far off from what we believe about God.
Okay. I mean, you realize that, I mean, Ben Stein, like that clip of Ben Stein's a known like quote mine, but I get that you're not saying that Ben Stein is admitting to there being a designer. He's just admitting that if there was a designer, this is how it would be.
Right. Yeah. So Richard Dawkins is saying that like if there was a designer, that's how it would probably come about scientifically. And so I'm just saying that's not far off from what Joseph Smith said God was, how God was a man before, and he came about in an inexplicable way in the same way Richard Dawkins said, and that he progressed to a level of understanding.
Right.
And yeah. So yeah, I'm not saying that atheists should be Mormons because of that one quote by Joseph Smith, but that obviously the Mormon God is a little bit different than what the mainstream Christian God the Father might be, sort of an omnipresent, immaterial, Trinitarian being that's always existed. We don't make that claim. We make the claim that he is a being in a different part of the world. Universe.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So, but I mean, there's other than Joseph Smith's like book that he supposedly read using these magical seer stones, which apparently aren't magical as long as he's reading the Word of God. They're just instruments of God. Any other use is considered magical.
Well, so for the King Follett Discourse and things like that, there were no seer stones used. He used seer stones to translate the Book of Mormon, and that's just about it.
How did he know that God is an alien living on another planet then?
Well, because God told him, right? So he saw God the Father, he saw Jesus Christ, he saw the beings that were human beings, And when he translated scriptures, he saw that God lived lives on a planet, and there's a star near the planet called Kolob. So that's how we know he lives somewhere in the universe.
Okay. Now, how do you discern God's voice from just crazy thoughts in your head?
That comes down to each person's interpretation. So you look at someone who's like a crazy schizophrenic. For example, my brother actually has schizophrenia, so I kind of have some firsthand. I've dealt with some of that, and or how people act when it has it. And you look at people like Joseph Smith or Joan of Arc or even Muhammad for that matter, and it doesn't seem that they hold up to be schizophrenics. Schizophrenics can't create entire libraries of scripture. Schizophrenics can't lead armies into battle. Schizophrenics can't do what Joseph Smith or Joan of Arc or Muhammad did. It seems to be pretty far-fetched. You either have to take that they were liars or they were geniuses or they were inspired by God, and their lives don't really reflect that they were liars. And if they were liars, they believed those lies, which means they were probably just sort of crazy, but they were crazy geniuses. You kind of have to take your pick. So some people go and say, oh, well, Joe Smith was just a con man. But honestly, that's such a lazy sort of South Park kind of like middle school look at it. Even some of the best academics right now who study Mormonism, who are not Mormons, don't say, oh, he was a con man, because once you really look into the complexity and the Hebraisms and the archaeology of the Book of Mormon, it's just a pretty kind of like lowbrow, lazy look at it, and no real like academics who publish in peer-reviewed academic journals would use the word con man to describe Joseph Smith. And maybe some, I can't think of anyone really intelligent who does that. Not to be insulting, but in terms of people who are teaching at university courses or publishing in peer-reviewed academic circles, they don't use that term. And they usually end up saying, look, we don't know how we made the Book of Mormon. It's really impressive. When you read it in light of ancient Hebraisms and things like that, and you look at the just the complexities of it and the chiasmus in it and things like that, you just don't say he was a con man. They don't say, oh, I believe him, but they kind of go, we don't really know. We don't know how he was able to guess Nahum as to be a place that exists in the Middle East. We don't know how he got that. We don't know how he got these things right, because he got a lot of things that were right. We don't know how he was able to write inverted parallelisms in a book while reciting it from a hat and never asking, hey, where did I leave off? And never asking for another reference or anything like that. So they kind of say, we don't know, maybe a genius, but it's really hard to go and say con man. That just doesn't seem, to say he's a con man, you kind of have to create a conspiracy theory.
So, well, no, you really don't have to create a conspiracy theory. I mean, you just gotta read history without like Mormons telling you or Latter-day Saints telling you what to read and not to read. I mean, because
I've never been told not to read a certain book in the church, so I've read a lot of what's called anti-Mormon stuff. But again, I just read the things that I feel like are peer-reviewed and credible. And most of the authors I've actually talked about today aren't Mormons. So John G. Turner isn't a Mormon. He's very intelligent scholar. He's Stephen H. Webb, very, very intelligent scholar, actually a Catholic. He's passed away. They're not Mormons. They wrote some of the best books on Mormon history, but it's got to be peer-reviewed. It's got to go through an academic circle. And if it comes out of a university, that's much better. But if it's just some dude online like David Fitzgerald, it's just like, I don't know how much I want to trust it.
David Fitzgerald's just not some dude online. He's a published like writer. He's written multitude of different books. So he's not just some online guy, for one. For two, like I said, you just got to look at Joseph Smith's history. I mean, because not only do you have his, how he supposedly found the golden plates and the first vision or even second or third visions or whatnot. I mean, if you look at that bank that he ran, which sorry, I can't remember the name of the bank. It was like Kirkland Bank.
The Kirkland Safety Society. Yeah. So, well, I just want to ask one more. about, because I know you're basing a lot of this off of Fitzgerald, and I don't know the guy. I don't want to beat the dead horse, but where does he teach?
He doesn't teach anywhere, but he also doesn't have to teach anywhere in order to write a book about history. I mean, he's got references in his book where he references sites, and has actual, like, for instance, with the court document. I mean, he had the actual court document in there.
Right. But
So
that court document doesn't really say anything suspicious. It just kind of gives a rundown of it, but there's no transcript in it. So I'm just kind of like, see, that's why even if I was to do something on like Islam, which I'm not a Muslim, right? I own a Quran, but that's about it. But if I wanted to get the best information on the history of Muhammad, I'd probably make sure it's based out of academic peer-reviewed circles coming from professors at respectable universities. But what I can find from Mr. Fitzgerald, respectfully, is that he really just seems to be some guy. He doesn't teach anywhere. He went to UC Fresno, and that's all his education is. There's no master's or PhD. Just kind of some guy who's published, and it doesn't go through any academic circle, and nothing's peer-reviewed. Just seems to be some dude.
So Kwaku,
Kwaku, yeah, it's right.
Kwaku, yeah. Okay, good. I said it right. Kwaku, I've noticed that you do this a lot with people like that you engage with. Is one thing that you'll do is that for instance on Twitter, if you're interacting with somebody, what you'll do is you'll basically bring up the profile, take a screenshot of it, post it, and then you'll attempt to publicly shame them as an argument against whatever thing that they were talking to you about. And just like right now you're trying to do with David Fitzgerald, you're bringing up like these things that you think are embarrassing or would degrade the arguments that he's coming at you with, and you're attacking the person rather than attacking the arguments that I'm presenting. And I mean,
so I can see where you're coming from there. On Twitter, that's mostly like my if I feel like someone's trolling, I screenshot to see that they're following two people and just created the account to argue with me. And so I usually just send that, and I'm like, I'm not arguing with the troll, and I'll block them. Usually, sometimes if I think their bio is just like crazy, I'll like make a joke out of it.
Is that what happened with Exmo Lex?
I don't know who that is.
Well, apparently you blocked her. And it seems like it seems
I block a ton of people. Yeah. If I feel like someone's trolling, I just, as opposed to starting an argument, oftentimes I'll just block. But like I said, this is a little bit different just because, like, you've brought up one argument from him, the 1826 trial. We checked it out. It just what he claimed was on the trial and what I saw in the summary don't match up, and that's why I'm saying, well, that's not, to me, that argument wasn't very credible. It was, okay, David Fitzgerald said the first vision account's false because there was a toad and the angel and the golden plates. And then we go to that Wheeler Chase account, and Wheeler Chase is mixing up two things. And then we go to the glass-looking trial, which he's claiming Joe Smith said it was a convicted fraud, and he admitted to being a fraud. And then he links to there, and we go look at that link, and it doesn't say what he said it said. And that's usually what happens when you have these authors who aren't going through peer-reviewed sources, and there's no committee giving them thumbs up. You kind of just get some guy. And I don't mean that to be disrespectful to Mr. Fitzgerald, but I don't think he's credible. It just seems to be literally just some dude. And if he's publishing and he's out of a university and he's teaching, then I go, okay, this guy, he's gone through the process to be someone I can listen to. But being a published author isn't hard. Anyone can do that. That doesn't really mean anything. It just means if you're publishing about something as important as a church's history or a large religious movement's history, I want to see that you got a master's or something. And if you don't, that's fine. I just want to, if you're claiming to be an academic, but you don't have any academia propping you up, I don't know how much I buy what you're saying. I'll probably move on to someone who I think is better.
I don't think that David Fitzgerald is claiming to be like an expert in Mormonism or an expert in world religions or anything like that, even though, I mean, he's been studying these subjects for the past 10 years. I mean, while he doesn't teach somewhere, I mean, obviously you're going to disagree with the evidence of the court document. That's fine. You're going to disagree with, other aspects that I've brought to you here today. And
Well, I mean, I won't disagree with the court document if it says, we just got to read what it says, right? And based on what I read, it just doesn't say what Fitzgerald is saying it says, right? If there's a part in the court document where it said, and this is when Joseph stood up and said, "I'm sorry, I made it all up. I didn't mean to deceive Josiah Stoll, or I meant to deceive him, and I made it up, and I can't see anything with the," okay, all right, then there's a case to be made. But that's just not what it says. There's not even a transcript in what he linked. It just seemed to be a summary of how two people viewed the case, and that's about it. So again, it just reads like that sort of claiming of here's really what happened at the court. And then we go look up that thing he's citing, and that thing he's citing doesn't verify what he says. I go, that's the problem with non-peer-reviewed academics. Just, you can't trust them. It's like, why would I read anything he says when I could read something from someone who's a little bit more esteemed, you know?
So you're going to go with a genetic fallacy then in order to dismiss him?
Well, I've seen, look, we've brought up one thing, right? So we gave it a chance. It didn't seem to hold up to muster. So, what's the point? That's kind of what I say, it's like, I can go make an opinion just looking at the raw sources before I even read anything by him, right? I mean, it just kind of seems to be, Richard Bushman, great. John Turner, great. Stephen H. Webb, great. David Fitzgerald doesn't seem to be included on that list.
Okay. All right. So, as far as like atheists becoming Mormons, I take it that you're of the opinion that you don't care if somebody, joins the Latter-day Saints church. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, like, obviously I would love people to join. I love when people are baptized, and whenever people email me or message me or comment that they've been baptized and our show is able to help or my channel is able to help, I love that. But ultimately, it's not that we believe you don't join the church, you burn in hell forever. So people still have a shot in the next life. And if you're not convinced by it in this life, there's nothing I can do to make you convinced, right? At the end of the day, you have your own agency and you can make your choice yourself. And if you say, I don't buy it, then, you don't buy it. Hope you have a nice life, have a nice marriage, go see a good movie, kind of do whatever you want. That's kind of how, there's not much else to say,
Yeah. Okay. I do want to respect your time, and we have been going for a little bit here. Do you mind if I ask you some questions that I had some super chats? That people did super chats to ask you a question?
Yes. If there's anything about the temple or what goes on in the temple, I can't answer, but anything else I probably can.
Okay, yeah, there's nothing about like what goes on in the temple or anything like that. Before it scrolls away, my wife, Casey, she actually had a question real quick. Kwaku, what are your qualifications? Do you have a master's degree? In what? What gives you authority, or are you just some guy on the internet? Why should people listen to you?
Right, so like I said, I'm just a YouTuber, and most of my videos include like GIFs and funny music. And my videos are for like middle schoolers and stuff. And so I've had a number of people say, hey, your videos are fun. They're for high schoolers, middle schoolers. And that's really all I would do. I don't claim to be an academic. I haven't written a book. I just make videos. And so because I make that claim of, hey, I'm just kind of a dude in college making fun videos, having a nice time, that's how people treat me. But if anyone was treating me like I was a scholar or academic and holding me up with these other academics, I would take issue with that. Okay. Because I don't claim to be that.
Okay. And then I had hold on. The Converse Contender asked question for Kwaku. What does I think that's Philippians 2:5-8 mean, if not the Trinity?
Philippians 2:5-8. So this looks like a Christian gentleman asking me a question. In your relationships, one another have the same mindset as Christ Jesus, who being in very nature God, did not consider equality with God something to be used to his own advantage. Rather, he made himself nothing but taking the very nature of a servant, being made in human likeness. So to me, it just reads that he was in equality with God because both were gods, and that's about it. To me, that doesn't seem to be a triune three in one sort of unexplainable mystery, but rather him being an equal with God didn't seek it robbery to be called God as well. And to me, that's just what it is.
Right. So on Latter-day Saint theology, gods are singular individuals, and everybody can become a god, right?
Yeah. So we don't believe in the Trinity. We believe that the Father, Son, Spirit, those three are just those three. We think they're one in purpose and goal and testimony and mission, but we don't believe they're one in that sense. And I just believe that they're all different gods, and people can become gods. That's just what we believe.
Okay. I'm kind of curious, like, if all of this is like, if Yahweh is in a physical place, and I'm guessing Jesus is still physically alive, is that correct?
Yes, he's in a physical places too with the Father.
Right. So when we die, how do we like physically manifest somewhere else? I'm guessing not like the exact process, but I mean, is it like we die and our spirit manifests like a whole new body, and we manifest on our own planet, and Jesus is like, go ahead, have fun? And is that what it's like? I'm being a little facetious in that. I really don't know.
But no, so we die and we go to the spirit world, and then there's the resurrection where everyone's resurrected, and then we are put into a category of glory, whether celestial, telestial, or terrestrial, and then we stay on the earth, and the earth becomes the new heaven. So we're going to stay here. This is our home. And basically we just become perfected, and the earth becomes perfected. And to become a god means you have the ability to create. And so you're joined in that holy union of a holy father and a holy mother, heavenly parents, to be able to create children and peoples and worlds. So really that's just it. We stay here, but the term God is, it's more of a position of glory and perfection.
Okay. Let's see. There's a couple here that's not directly, talking at you. Uhan Roderick, can't watch a stream, but hanging with family who's visiting. Love you all, Brocephus 2020. I've got an alter ego that I have here on the channel that I have fun with called Brocephus. He's a redneck Southern Baptist Christian, so I have fun with that. Josiah Hansen just tweeted out the Dawkins vid explaining G-Man's quote mine. So I had a video on my channel today that was somebody quote mined the exact same quote that you were talking about, but they said that that Dawkins was admitting to intelligent design or something like that. So, all right, and then just another Exmo is asking you, Kwaku, everything is different on the other side. One of the most amazing things is that I've learned how to respect people for who they are. It's not really a question, but do you have any kind of response for that?
Well, that's good. That's good. Sometimes I think when you're a YouTuber and you have to make videos responding to criticisms, and you read very critical or mean comments all day long, it can be difficult to just take the benefit of the doubt to everyone. And so, each person, I assume you and I, everyone who does a show, we've probably said things online that we regret. That just kind of comes with doing a show. And so it's good to respect people where they are and who they are, regardless of their race or gender or political beliefs or, who they love and stuff like that. Respect and love people. And that's Jesus's message.
Right. And then we got Fourth Dimensional Jake, who says there are plenty of good, honest people in the porn industry. They are not all connected to trafficking. That is an unjustified broad brushing of people. I'm guessing have you always been very anti-porn?
Yes. Yeah. I we could probably do a whole different show on that. I think it's, I won't mince words. I think it's evil. I think, there have been enough cases of young girls who have been trafficked. I think Pornhub is incredibly shady with the lack of verification, age verification they put online. I think the porn star suicide rate is incredibly high. Just terrible, terrible things happen. I think it does awful things to young boys, especially high school boys. And it's just the increase in porn consumption also shows an increase of sexual assault and things like that. I just think it's evil. I think there's so many problems with it. And I just find it to be an awful place. You look at some of the top searches every year in porn, and they're just violent. It's like oftentimes teenager and teenage girl and stepfather and just horrible, horrible things. And I just think it's evil. And I think that I feel like I'm pretty reasonable in most things. If I was president, I would ban it without a doubt. I would make it illegal, and I would probably fine anyone who attempted to watch it. But yeah, I think it's a very bad thing. I think it exploits people. I think those porn stars go through incredible depression. Many kill themselves. I think it contributes to sexual assault. I think it contributes to deviating young men and young girls' minds. And I think creates far more problems than it solves. And yeah, so I'm hardcore against it.
I'm definitely not for thought control. I mean, I was curious because I know Pornhub likes to put out their biggest search terms for any given year. In 2017 for Utah, lesbian was a popular search term. Hentai was also a popular search term. And apparently,
people, there are members of the church who watch porn, and it's a sin when we do it, just as it's a sin when anyone does it. Yeah, no matter what, I think it's evil. How do
you feel about church elders cornering young people in their offices, shutting the door, and asking them to describe their masturbatory activities?
I think that's crazy and wrong. That's never happened to me. I know a lot of people who go in to talk to a bishop about repentance, and every time I've been to a bishop to talk about if I went too far with a girl or something, he just says, I don't really want details. How do you feel? Such and such. It's pretty quick in and out visit. And, I think we need to be careful with how we're talking to young children about sexual ethics, because we can be a bit lazy about it, or we can be a bit not understanding of how that can be a very difficult experience. So, yeah, I'm all in favor of making sure that we do it better. I'm also in favor of having parents in the room, especially if it's a young girl talking to a bishop who's an older man about something sexual related. I'm in favor of parents being there, things like that. Little girls, probably you shouldn't be talking to little girls about sexual related things unless they've been assaulted or they're confiding in you and you need to go to the authorities or something. But yeah, it's not more bishopal confessions are really not this thing where they grab the young boy and say, "Oh, have you been doing such and such?" That's usually a caricature. So you get some weird bishops, and that's really bad. I think those people should be released. But for the most part, bishops don't want to know details. It's kind of uncomfortable for them too.
Well, I mean, I've had ex-Mormons, on my channel, who have talked about how they've been, cornered by their elders, and and told to talk about their all of that kind of stuff. So I get your experience with it, but I would also caution that not everybody experiences that.
Like I said, if there are bishops who do things like that, I think that's a problem. I think most don't. I think it gets down to everyone has a different experience, and that's just kind of the way it is.
It's not streaming now. I'm sorry, my my computer had a conniption there for a second.
I was wondering. I thought it was me. I went to check mine.
Tell them it was the porn.
No, it was definitely the porn.
You guys are on.
Apparently.
Okay.
You're streaming.
Yeah, I'm streaming now. Apparently.
You need to hang up on the phone.
Well, I need to get Skype back because apparently that crashed. So hold on. Okay, let me see if I can. Hold on 1 second. I'm gonna end it and then I'm gonna call right back. Okay. It might have been Skynet. I don't know. Okay. All right. So sorry about that. I do. I did. There is one more comment. I'm so sorry, and then I'll let you go. I
No,
didn't mean
it's
to keep
okay.
you on here for that long. Um, anyways, so there is one last one. It's just another Exmo who says, Kwaku, I remember trying to bend a narrative on some hard subjects. At some point, you realize you've bent too much. Truth shouldn't require excuses. It's not really a question, but you might want to respond to it.
Yeah, I feel like learning about church history and the Gospels only made my belief in it stronger. And people can say, you hear a lot of people who go, "Oh, I was once Mormon, and then I left because it was crazy." And you hear people go, "Oh, I've known about this forever, and I've always believed in it." So to me, like the I've been there arguments, kind of who cares? Sure, whatever. You can pick your pick. You hear the same thing with like, "I was once a Republican, and now I'm a Democrat because I've seen the light." Like, who cares? It doesn't really matter. It's it's just
Okay.
not a big deal to me. Yeah.
All right. Well, I don't think I had any more comments from the super chats or anything like that. So, I really appreciate you coming on here and talking to me about this stuff. You've given me a lot of things to really look into and look at because, I mean, honestly, I have not been too exposed to like a lot of the Mormon like history centric kind of Mormon discussions. Like I've watched the Mormons talking about Mormon history stuff, but being able to actually question somebody about it and tell them what my issues are about the entire situation and seeing what you have to say about it. Like I've never really seen that before. So
Right.
it's been
Well, no,
interesting.
thank you for letting me on. I hope it was fun for your audience. I know these shows are often, when it's mostly an atheistic audience, and so atheists are not usually the biggest fans of Mormons. So I hope that they enjoyed it nonetheless, because it can be kind of a boring conversation sometimes when you're talking about 19th century court trials. It's not the
Well,
most
yeah, it can be, and there were some people that were kind of upset with your answers. But I mean, I think that having these questions answered is good, regardless of how many people want to watch or anything. I think these kind of discussions are very interesting. These are the kind of things that I love to listen to. Getting into the nitty gritty of like the problems that I have with it, and also I mean I just in general like history. So it's been very cool, and I'm glad that you came on, and I'm glad that you're not like mad at me or anything like that for any of the questions that I asked.
No,
Um,
no, this is good. Hopefully, if we do this again, I'll we'll be able to both see each other, and maybe next time we can talk more about God and like the existence of God itself, because
oh
I find those to be more fun. Those are usually what people are really, ooh, this should be interesting.
yeah, but I mean it's kind of like it's kind of one of those situations where those things have been talked about a lot, and so like there are people out there that argue for those things, but talking about the history of it and everything like that, like I haven't really found any good resources like on YouTube, like or anywhere. So it's been nice hearing like from you what sources you trust on it, and being able to compare that to other things I think would be very good. So I'm glad that you're interested in coming back on, because I'd love to have you back on sometime so that we can talk about like God and theology and all that kind of stuff. So maybe we can set that up in the future if anybody's interested. I couldn't find a direct link to Kwaku's channel that's just simple that I could put on the screen, but I will have his link down in the description, or you can just search up Kwaku on YouTube, and he's the top thing. He's the channel that comes in, the very first one on YouTube. So you got very good brand awareness there, Kwaku.
Oh, I know. I feel good about that. Thank you. Yeah, thanks for having me on. Appreciate it a lot.
No problem. You heathens out there, I don't know if I'll be doing a stream later or not. It'll definitely be different than what we had planned because we kind of talked about what we were going to talk about here. So I'll let you guys know soon if that's going to happen. And I guess we will see you heathens later. Thank you guys for all of your questions and statements and everything like that. You guys help make the show. And I guess we'll see you heathens later. Don't forget to stand up and use your voice. Bye, heathens.